Welcome everyone to Friday's Live at 5. It's a balmy 1 degree here in southeast Iowa. That's about minus 16 and a half for you centigaders. But this week I wanted to cover this topic of light shadows, transparency of shadows. Hello, Renee. Last week, I don't think I got the shadows quite as transparent as I could. And a lot of that was because we were working with the different triad palettes, and that particular yellow was a rather dense yellow. So this week I'm going to work with my normal palette, the neutral tin, ultramarine blue, cobalt cerulean, cobalt turquoise, Prussian, cad orange, cad yellow, yellow ochre, red iron oxide, quinacridone rose, naphthol red, Holbein lavender, and nickel azo yellow. So I'm going to use more colors, but I am going to substitute for the yellow ochre. I'm going to substitute some raw sienna. I'll explain why. And for those of you who are, hi Michael. I always think maybe it's good to review the basics. Watercolor is just knowing what is going to happen when a certain consistency of paint is applied to a certain condition of the paper. The two conditions of paint are runny paint, more water than paint, slow moving paint, more paint than water. And then basically the three conditions of the paper are dry paper, like this. Then when you apply some paint, there's water on the surface, but it's immediately starting to saturate into the paper. And then after a while, the water can soak into the paper, be below the surface, but the pigment is still on top and it's not yet dry. And then we're back to, when the paint dries, we're back to situation number 1 with the paint. So for starters, I'm going to do the drawing here. This is, last week we did this doorway in Saint-Rémy. This is in Normandy. That was in Provence. This is in Normandy. It's a little town called Orgevie, which I believe translates to barley town. Very small town, very beautiful, very like that. So first thing I do, as always, I look for my key vertical and my key horizontal, which I'm going to call that and this. I'm going to use the point method, where I'm going to put a dot on the paper, and then I'm going to find that, which is about the third mark. Lightly put it in. There are some things here. Notice that is getting very close to this. So I'm going to pretend that perhaps I was a little further over this way. And the other problem is there's a roof line back here that meets the point of this roof line. This was a very old, actually it was a farm with a barn which had been converted to a gîte, which is like a B&B. So I can see that actually is not steep enough. So I'm going to move this a little further over here. Do the pencil method. I'm going to hold the pencil to get the angle. I'm going to let this come down a little further than this. some chimney pot action, and I will make these darker when I am convinced I've got everything where I need it to be. There's a horizontal in here. I'm looking at this relative to that. Find the big shapes before you find the small shapes. Notice that this is higher up than that. Then there's this business in here. Some sliding doors and some windows. Where does this come in relation to that? Well, if we're changing our position, it may not be in the same place. There's some hedges over here. Some foliage. A lot of foliage up in here. The thing that's actually, as it were, causing all of the shadow. The light is coming in from this direction. So here's that area there. These garage doors. Small window. We'll darken everything up as soon as I find that I have it in more or less the right spot. Let's make it look a little more antique. Let's not have it quite so Monopoly House perfect. Where's that? Okay. Now things like that, you can move them around, these windows, so that they're not creating tangents. Well, look at this. Yeah, we need to half that. Okay. So I'm going to begin to take out some construction lines that are not going to be used. A lot of this, particularly the free shapes, the trees, the foliage, most of that is going to get painted. I just have to know where is it versus the particular shape. There's a minor window in here, but there's some hedge. Blacking that, which I like. These things like this, like, the car, I don't need that. The gate, I don't need that. What I do like is the way that perhaps something like these hedges or bushes create a situation where these hard lines kind of plunge into, the hard verticals plunge into the hard horizontals. I want them to be softened. So this hedge, this bush, they all do that. So it's a, and plus these are geometric or man-made shapes. These organic, natural shapes form a foil to that. There's some sort of garage over here. I think I could be a little... Let's darken up. Now there are some not real pigs and geese and chickens, but I think I want to put some chicken shapes in there. It's rather... This rose bush, climbing rose. And notice how this is a place where we have a hard vertical meeting a hard horizontal, and it softens it where the two meet. Very, very useful to my mind. So, hi, Jen. So I'm going to darken up some of these lines and put some Eve into them. This gets covered up, but again, that performs that same function as this and this. It creates the softening point where the hard verticals and the hard horizontals meet. There seems to be a secondary line in here. There's some windows. I think I'll try to indicate those. Most of them are going to be covered by the foliage, but we won't do that. We'll see. Chickens. Gosh, let's put some chickens in. Now we've got a kind of a area down here which is not terribly activated. There is a shadow line, shadow shapes and shadow lines coming across here that break that up. But I would like to put some chickens in here. And they're basically crescent cookie shapes with little heads, or upside down commas. There's an Iowa artist named Marvin Cohn, who is a compatriot of Grant Wood. It's very underrated. And he made these, if you go to the Cedar Rapids Museum of Art, you can see these wonderful paintings of his where he makes what I call checkmark chickens. And they're literally, as a brushstroke, they're literally just little check marks. But they absolutely read as chickens. It's painting magic. Very underrated guy. Okay, so the usual sequence in painting a watercolor, light to dark. First thing to consider, where am I going to leave white paper? Well, over here, certainly. Hello, Martha. There are some white places in here, but they're not quite as white as that. That needs to be kind of a pale blue. If you squint, you will see the difference in brightness or value between this and that. bits of it in there. Oops. Get rid of that. Bits of that in here. We'll try to do that. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put in those lighter colors. Here I'm going to go in with some raw sienna because it's lighter than the blue of the sky. This is similar. This is similar. That where it's not in shadow is similar, but it's a slight, this is yellower, that's redder. So I'll try to get that. I'll try to get this bluer, try to get that yellower, try to get that redder, try to bring this back similar to that, try to leave that white. There's going to be some sienna reddish, but it'll be more of a medium value behind there. I might put some yellow in here. Biggish brush, a number 14 to 16 squirrel mop. Let's get our raw sienna. It's that one there. Okay. Well, hopefully that's not too, it's going to look dark for now. Now I'm going to try to put a little bit of burnt sienna in that. A little more. Now the reason I'm using raw sienna as opposed to yellow ochre is sort of dense. It's a large pigment particle. Whereas raw sienna is a smaller pigment particle. So I'm going to get a little bit of cerulean blue. Oh shoot. There's some blue down here. Let's just put a lot of water in it. And I'm going to whoop in there. I know that's going to look dark, but not later. And I don't mind if they merge a bit. Back to the regular mix. Oh, let's actually make this one over here yellow. Oops, I shouldn't have hit that. Let's make this kind of yellow ochre so that it looks different than that and this. And then put a little red in it. Now I'm looking underneath the shadows, right? We can paint, when in watercolor, you can paint your shadows on top of, now I'm going into the bright yellow now. It's going to look too bright, but something's going to go on top of it. Oh, good heavens. Cad yellow light, that's a bit much. Let's put that there, some of that there. I'm thinking in terms of these brighter yellow areas there. Now I'm going to go back into the burnt sienna / red iron oxide, and I'm going to get these areas on that roof. And that's good darker, so let's go ahead and get that. Let's throw a little of that in there just for good measure. Now, what about a little bit of yellow ochre and cad yellow in here? That's going to be a greenish area, but I'm anticipating a darker color over that. And this grass too. So I want it to get softer, which is why I'm painting. So this is an example of wet on dry. And I'm letting the colors mingle because where it looks imprecise now, but what's going to happen is we're going to put darker colors on top, and it'll, you know, God willing and the creek don't rise. We'll get away with it. Okay, sky. I put this in first. I'm looking at it from the side. It's still a little wet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mop this out because I'll need a big puddle of blue. Rinsing the brush. Probably going to use cerulean. A runny mix, but it's a fairly dark color to begin with. Running being if I move it, it's kind of, well, it's not moving too fast, is it? Let's put a little water in it. And I'm just, you know, talking so I can save a little time because I want this to I need some in here too. Painting underneath that tree. If a little bit gets onto the building there, I'm not too concerned because there's a dark edge from the shingles. But I do need some blue behind areas in here where the sky is showing through. And if some of this comes down into the yellow here, no big deal, because that's going to be green later. A darker green at that. So I'm still good until I screw something up. And we always leave that. So here, that surface was still a little bit wet. So when I put this in, it's going to melt. Further down, the board is on a not quite 45-degree angle. So it's wetter at the bottom of the sheet than it is at the top of the sheet. That's why this isn't getting so messy as this. Okay, now we may get to a point where I have to say, oh, we may need to dry this. What else could I do? There are shadows coming across here. They're going to get painted on top as a glaze. I think I'm going to put a little bit of alizarin to get this to look a little more red than these other areas down here. So now I'm going to look at this and I'm going to say, all right, maybe I should rinse my brush and dry this. So before I get, oh, you know what? No. I'm looking at things here and I'm thinking, is that too much like that? Yeah, but when I put that shadow in, I might be okay. And if I do need to change it, I can glaze it. So now I'm going to mute and go to the hairdryer Okay. Now I want to start going in with my sort of medium value colors. I might get a different brush for that, something that is a little pointier, maybe it's about the same size, but it has more of a, when you wet it, you can see it is kind of pointier, and it'll let me do smaller marks. This one just holds a lot of water and paint, so that's why I like it for the early stages. Now, what are our medium colors? Probably could have gone darker with that sky, but we'll see. I want to make some medium greens. So I'm going to get a combination of the yellow ochre and the cad yellow light. There are going to be darker areas here. We might do them now. First, I'm going to do these shapes. See, I like this pointier brush because I can get on the end of the handle and work the tip to get these tiny little shapes, some of which I'll do darker later. Trying not to cover my blue too much, because the whole purpose of putting the blue in there was so we could show the sky behind, right? So this is a runny paint, but it's a mix of darker colors. And, oh yeah, there's a bit of that's in. I love the way the French put their plantings in. And it was June, so, gosh, it's always beautiful with the roses and things. So a much, much slower moving mix of darker blues, like the Prussian, and let's even get into this Nicolazo yellow, and the Prussian, and perhaps even a bit of red. Now that makes a mush. Now I just painted there, so you can see this is starting to melt into what is just painted. Let's put some more blue in it, dark blues, particularly the Prussian. Squinting to see where that occurs. Primarily up here. It's fun to dance the tip of the brush. There's some of that in here. There's like a little patio area back there. And then as we come down this hedge here, the top of it is illuminated partially. I'm going to put some straight ultramarine blue into that, right into the pocket. Put a little bit of alizarin into that to get a bit of a purple. I say alizarin, but really what it is, it's quinacridone rose. I had the habit of saying alizarin because that was the color we used back in the day. And it was not terribly light fast as colors go. And now we use quinacridone rose or a variety of other colors because they are more light fast. Same thing happens up in here and in here. So I waited till I painted this so that the brush was exhausted so I can get a more of a dry brush effect. So I'm using the texture of the paper, which, by the way, is 140-pound cold press Hahnemühle German paper. I might need a little bit of water in that to keep it moving. And flowing. If there's water on the paper, the pigment can swim in it. If there isn't, the mark will stay pretty much where you put it. A lot of water here, so you can see this is this right here stays put because there wasn't a lot of water there. Here, there still is. Put some yellow in it to make it greener. Okay, we'll see. Now, that area. I don't want the yellow greens in here and the yellow greens in here to be the same. So I'm going to put some of this and some yellow ochre so that's or I should be using the raw sienna, doggone it. So that the character of it is different. Maybe just a touch of it in there. Or up here. Certainly we need some of that in here. There will be a deep shadow going across that whole thing. Looking at this now, and I'm thinking, where can I work without having to dry it? I'm thinking probably up here, there. Let's mop this out. Well, shouldn't have to do that, really. Could use it later. Some burnt sienna or red iron oxide, a little bit of the ultramarine to keep it from being too strident brown. Hi, Mickey. So I'm going to get that, whatever it is, the soffit or now I'm going to put more blue in it to make it more like a burnt umber. And I'm going to do this roof. One of them was very ancient, ancient. Probably from quite early on. The other one was a more recent, in that it had been converted. Some kind of gets darker in there. Those are more bluish. But I think probably I'm better off putting that kind of stuff in after I get my shadows in. I'm starting to get to the point. Now these chickens, part of them are going to have to be geez, you got to have some chickens, right? French countryside, we got to have some chickens, right? Okay, let's rinse. I'm thinking maybe I'm going to make a mixture of Prussian and quinacridone rose to put some very, very strong darks here where the foliage is, the shade is the deepest. More of that. Ultramarine, quinacridone, more ultramarine. Well, Prussian, a blue and a cool red. That's what I'm shooting for. I want a strong, strong shadow pattern moving from here to here and then down to there. Because I have to indicate what is causing all these shadows. So because this is damp, I need to be putting slower moving paint. See, that doesn't run. So more of it. And to have a strong dark next to the strong light gives us that kind of contrast that says light and shadow. Let's get some tight shadows underneath these areas here. Like that. Okay, let's rinse that. And now we're going to go to the mute and dry this. Okay, now I'm going to start alternating between a couple of small brushes. And I'm going to start putting in the shadows, which is kind of the whole reason for this painting. And maybe the details of the architecture. but big shapes before smaller shapes. So let's get some ultramarine into that mix. Let's make a fair bit of it. Water. So I want something that's slowish moving, because we're working on a dry surface. Okay. All of that, the shadow is dappling. Across the windows, it's dappling. Somewhat here under the there's an eave shadow, which I'm going to make a little more prominent than it actually is. I have a natural stopping point here, and I'm going to take advantage of it. Now I'm going to put more of that ultramarine and a little bit more of the red, because one of the ways you can make a convincing sense of a shadow, transparent shadow. Gosh, I'm going to put some of it on here because the shadow is being cast on the foliage as well. But the point I was just about to make, which I want to make strongly, is that when a shadow goes from one material to another material, there should be a bit of difference. So let's make it maybe a little browner, because it's on gravel, but the stone to gravel, what's the difference? Okay, now I have to, let's do the big one first. So I'll make more. Ultramarine, alizarin, quinacridone rose, a little bit of, oh gosh, wait a minute. Yeah, more, well, a blue. So a good way to illustrate this is that we got grass here and gravel there. So there should be a color change. So I'm going to paint this area first because it's big. Shadows from the chickens. Bring that up to the grass area there. Show me some shade on the chickens. Then I got to put some yellow into this to make a dark shady green, bluish shady green. Not blue enough, bluer. Okay. So here we go. When it goes from grass to gravel, it should be a different color. Don't make your shadows the same going across two different materials. Now I have to make up more of that color again. Ultramarine blue. A little bit of quinacridone rose, some burnt sienna. Oh, too much burnt sienna, so I have to be more ultramarine blue. Good grief, let's wipe some of that, rinse it, get more blue in there. A little bit of alizarin. Shoot. Coming out of here, going across to here. Gonna try and frame our chickens. Let's put a little bit of that in there just for It's a foliage shape, so we can make the shape we want for our painting. It doesn't have to be the exact thing in the photo reference, does it? There's a window in there, a small one, which I'm going to kind of lightly indicate. There's a bit of an eave shadow under that. There's some things, and if I were an architect, I'd know what they were, but I'm not. I like a TV antenna, because it breaks up the shape. Take a little bit of that and work it under here. Okay, now we got to get in. Ooh, there's a shadow. In this access door here. And there's, well, these shadows are different character. So, oh, goodness, I've almost missed. The shadow back here. That's important. If it wasn't there, I think I might put it in anyway, because when you have dark shapes and light shapes, you need to tie them together or move them towards each other or make them mate or connect. And again, I'm seeing I need to be a little bit darker or irregular in my darks in here and there. And perhaps a bit in there and a fair bit in here. Now, just for some fun, let's get some orange or some red and put a head on that chicken. There we go. 3 French hens. Paint 2 turtle doves up here. And a partridge in a pear tree, or whatever. Okay, now we need to get into these strong darks. And that's where I need to get into this smaller brush. It doesn't hold as much paint. So I'm just going to get some neutral tint and go into this blue. Now notice these windows are a little darker up here and a little bit lighter down there. Little tiny little things like that help. I want to demonstrate this. It's a round pointed brush, but if you need to make a square shape, go sideways. Don't go on the point. Go. See how you can get a squarish line there. So that's what I'm going to try and do here. There's a overhang. Now I need to lighten that, or maybe change the color a little bit, or maybe I'll put some greenish bluish in it. Oh, I don't know, maybe that's not just has to be a little bit different. Now I need to go back to the dark bit and get this stuff there. Gosh, now I've really part of that up there. Maybe just some spots in there. Okay, I could make them a little bigger. Okay, that critter there, that's important. Now it's a dark, but it's a kind of a warmish dark, so I'm going to work some neutral tint and burnt sienna into that. And those windows, I need a little bit of that warm stuff up in here too. Maybe even in there. Things that are all one dark are never quite as pleasing, at least to me. If they're just one color, I like them to be a little bit of some warm, some cool. Now, where do I want to go now? What I need, doggone it, some very pale blue, dirty blue. I need to have some shadow dapple across that white. And I need to have some yellow ochre and some dirty brown. To make that look a little, I can see that roof would like to be a little bit darker back there. Perhaps a line of that here. Perhaps a line of this there. Perhaps a little bit more vivid green there, here, here and there. Down in that area, I want it to be a little bit redder or warmer. So I'm going to put something reddish, orangish, with a lot of water. There. And then there and there. Doggone it. Let's get that whole thing. Now I feel that that area is separating from this area a little better. I can see I need a darker separation here. What? Oh yeah, maybe a bit more here. Possibly a bit in there. Some all right, now what I think I need to do is I think I need to peel the tape and see if that tells me anything. I hear a cat. As far as I know, all mine are inside. There is one that comes around, so I may have to go out and give the poor bugger something to eat. Okay, I'm starting to see something already. Just minor adjustments, which it's so strange. You never see this stuff until you actually get into it. All right, you peel the tape off. This area here needs to be a little bit darker. There. That needs to be a little cooler, or blue or green, so I'm going to put some turquoise in it, cobalt turquoise. Thank you, Renee. I can't take credit. Normandy is a beautiful, beautiful place. I could make some of those windows a little darker. And I think just a little yellower here. So I'm going to glaze it with just the tiniest bit of yellow ochre. Makes it look a little sunnier, I think. At this scale, I'm not going to try and paint the stones. At a larger scale, I might try to indicate those. The texture of them. I think the shadow needs to be a little deeper down here. Right here. Perhaps here. Perhaps here. And perhaps here. But I'm going to leave it at that and make my final decisions. I I think I would also like this to be a little bit darker so that the white of the chickens, well, some of the chickens are white, I could make the chickens darker, but I think what I'll do is a lot of water, very, very pale glaze. Oh dear. To make the chickens stand out just a bit more. Oh, thank you, Jan. You know what? Gosh, I think I want some of that up here too. Yeah. Yeah. That makes me happy. All right, okay. Beautiful place, Orangeville. Tiny, tiny little town. Bigger than the town that I live near. I mean, smaller than the town that I live near. But the idea with the transparency of shadows here is that I'm trying to use pigments that are not quite as heavy-bodied and opaque as that yellow I was using last week, so that everything here is sort of light, and I'm using the glazing technique for the shadows. So probably could have used yellow ochre there, but I used raw sienna initially because it's a little bit less opaque. When you important thing about shadows, a lot of people miss it sometimes. When you go from one material to another material, there should be some change in color, even though the shadow is being cast by one object. So hopefully you enjoyed that. I sure did, especially being there in Normandy. Don't miss the Calvados if you ever go there. And thank you all for tuning. Oh, doggone, I just saw something. How about that? There's some sort of little, that's a hard, one of the things I was trying to talk about, when you have a hard vertical or a hard horizontal or even a hard diagonal where two of them meet, it's such a boom, boom. If there's something to soften it or change it, that's nice. There's a little, I don't know what the heck it is. Coming out of the roof there. And I noticed that I had drawn it in, but failed to paint it. Goodness me. Let's put a couple more of these little windows there. Okay. Don't get carried away, John. You'll be sorry. Less is always more until you find that you need to add it, then add it. So the point I was making, always make sure that your color changes or something changes when you go from one material to another with a cast shadow. So again, thank you all for tuning in. I hope everybody stays warm. I hope everybody stays safe in this nasty, nasty weather. Stay safe, stay sane. Peace out.